Welcome to Surviving as a Civilian. This is the AAR for Nick Clemons. I am your host, Scott, here with my co-creator and co-host, Andrew Callas. How are you, Andrew?
I'm doing quite well, Scott. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for asking. So this last week, we interviewed Nick Clemons. I knew him vaguely from the deployments and stuff, but you had a little bit closer relationship with him due to the nature of the military, correct?
Yeah, he was on my team for this deployment.
Which deployment? The last one you did together? Because you did.
Yeah, I did one before this one, the one he talks about, and then we did the Kandahar deployment 2011, I believe.
All right. So, what were some of the things that you got from? I know you had some different perspectives than Nick Clemens had on some of the stories he told. Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, that's why in the beginning of the intro to the podcast, we talk about events may have changed because I mean this shit was like 10 years ago, you know. So, but I actually have the journal entry and the map I drew from the event he discusses in the podcast.
You actually took a you wrote a journal while you were deployed.
Well, I didn't do it every mission, but as soon as this one was over, I put in for him to get a Bronze Star. I started the paperwork. So I when I got back, I wanted to write down the events while it was fresh in my head. So I actually have that. I actually read that journal entry and looked at the map, and I can. I think I have a better regulation of the day. I can recall it better because of that.
So before you do that, can you just kind of recap what his version was, because in case people forgot?
Um, well, it wasn't too much difference, but there was two medevac birds that came down because there were three casualties. So he said there was only one helicopter. Um, and then he talked about how he was shooting 40 mics over the helicopter. And I just want to say right now, that did not happen. They were in front of the helicopter. So what was crazy was when they were all when the helicopters were taking contact, I had to tackle an ANA soldier. This ANA soldier was trying to shoot an RPG in between the two helicopters, and I was like, "No, bro."
Wait, what? So the two helicopters, were they the security or the medevac birds that were there?
What was that? I didn't hear you.
So the two birds that they were going to shoot between, were they the security or were they the medevac birds?
They were the medevac birds on the ground, and
Ah,
the we were behind the line. You know, I was because I stayed on that IED with Amador, so no one stepped on that one. And the guy, we were behind the soldiers, behind the medevacs, and this the ANA dude was going to shoot an RPG in between the helicopters, and I was like, "This is insane." It was such a shit show that day. So many mistakes were made.
how far apart were the helicopters on the ground?
They were probably only like 50 yards apart. They were pretty close.
And this dude was just
Um,
gonna launch an RPG between them to get after whoever is shooting at you guys, or were you guys in contact
yeah,
at this
yeah,
point?
we. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're good. Were you guys in contact at this point?
Yeah, they were those medevacs, man, got lit up, dude. They probably got shot like 100 times each. They were like once the medevacs were on the ground, the Taliban stopped shooting at us and just lit up those helicopters. And I remember sitting there and I was like, because I couldn't shoot back because I was behind them all. You don't shoot over friendly forces, obviously. So I was just sitting there like watching it, and I was like, those helicopters I was like, they gotta leave. I was like, why are they still sitting there? Because there's no armor on helicopters.
That's nuts, man. But they got out of there though, right? They took the casualties out of there.
Yeah, they took the 2 casualties that we could find, and then they took off. And then, like Nick said, that it took us a while to recover the 3rd casualty, and then we carried him back to the cop.
So you mentioned at the top of this that you had to tackle the ANA guy from shooting the RPG because you said no, and then he just kept proceeding with the shooting.
Well, he ran by me and then took a knee in front of me. So one, I was gonna be in his back blast too. You know what I mean? So I was like, it was just a no go, and I had to like grab him and push him to the ground, and then like no, because they don't speak English too. You know what I mean? So I was just like, no
good. Was he pissed at you, or did he understand?
No, he understood. He understood that he couldn't shoot that anymore, and I just like held him to the ground until the tick was over.
Jesus Christ, man! Those birds are lucky you were there, because had you not been in that place at that time, that dude would have launched that shit.
Oh yeah, he definitely would have launched it, man, and it just would have been so bad, dude. It was already so bad, and it just like it sucked that those 3 soldiers passed, but it was a really big eye-opening for all the soldiers on the ground that day, and they tightened up their shot group immensely after that, and everything went very smooth after that day.
That's good. So what else did you get out of Clemons's? And you still talk to Nick Clemons, don't you? You guys are still friends, huh?
Yeah, he lives down the street from me, actually. Let's see. How about that parade in Iraq? That's some crazy stuff.
Yeah, that was the craziest thing about that is that when I was our deployment together, the last one where I was kind of loosely in your chain of responsibility or whatever, the commander we had wanted to put a zoo downtown in one of the areas we were in. A zoo, Andrew Collis, for the Afghans to enjoy.
Where was he going to get the animals?
I don't know. I'm glad somebody was like, and I don't know if this was just some idea he threw out there, kind of like spitballing, like how to raise the hearts and win the hearts and minds of the locals. But I knew for a fact that a week after we stopped watching that zoo, those animals would have been butchered and ate, essentially.
Yeah, I don't know how that would turn out, but that's crazy. But like same with the parade, like was it? I guess it was like to raise morale or something. Like they were just so bored in Iraq that they had to have a parade. It's crazy.
And then another time, the deployment before that, the other one where you did mostly route clearance on, when fob shank was split into 2. I don't know if you remember that or not, but it was 2 separate fobs. Well, on the fob that I wasn't on, where all the mechanics and like the or the helicopters were, they were going to put in a sod softball field, a no shit sod softball field. And when they got the cost back, the cost was astronomical. I mean, it was close to 6 figures to put this thing in, but that was when the money was flowing for all sorts of crazy shit. Finally, thank the Lord, somebody shot that idea down.
Yeah, Shank that I didn't spend too much time there. I was in and out a couple times, but that place got huge, that deployment. Like they had those UAVs taking off. They had all sorts of shit. They were building like crazy.
Yeah, that was we were there. You guys weren't there much, but when I was there, there was a fob west or a fob shank west and a fob shank east, right? With a major hardball Afghan highway running down the middle, right? A major is one of those. It was Highway 1, the one that did the ring route through all of Afghanistan, basically the big loop. And for some fucking reason, the great ideas of the Army decided to close down that highway, make one fob shank, and run a bypass around the fob, as opposed to just moving one of the sides over to the other side, because there was plenty of room. But that's what ended up happening that whole deployment, is they built this and they rerouted this hardball road to go right around the fob and join the 2.
Yeah, they were doing some crazy stuff there, man. Um, Back to the mission with 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 Nick. So he talked about how I walked up to the medic and was like, it was like, how many tourniquets do you have? I was like, you need to get ready because something's about to go down. And the reason I knew that was the engineers that I replaced, the lefty righties, told me that the Taliban will shoot pop shots from a direction to try to get us to move into that direction, and they will funnel us into a cluster of IEDs. And that is exactly what happened that day, and no one would listen to me.
Yeah, that was a thing they kind of got good at. And the problem was, and I'm not really going to try to get into too much of the specifics of everything, but the problem was is that people that were brand new in country and didn't have that experience or patience would get baited in on that shit, and it'd be a fucking disaster. And that's why the 40 mics were the key to success, because yeah, you could hear where the pop shots were coming, but you couldn't go after them, and because you'd never get them because they were in the wadis with the tree lines and stuff. So all you could do is throw 40 mics at them all day long, and hopefully you pinched one of them. But most of the time, you didn't even get a chance to get into contact with them.
Well, yeah, and we were attached to the infantry unit, and infantry is like all about like attack, kill, and chase the enemy down, you know. And they didn't really know what combat engineers did, you know what I mean? Like when I met the LT, I was like, hey, we can metal detect and find IEDs for you, and he was like, whatever, go to the back of the line, you know. And after that day, like 2 days later, we were on another mission, and the LT came up to me and he was like, the elder just told me that there's IEDs in this intersection at the end of the town. And he was like, what should I call EOD? And I was like, no, I'll go find them and dig them up. And he was like, are you fucking crazy? You want to do this? I'm like, yeah, that's what combat engineers do. You know, they didn't understand like what we were. And then we went down to the intersection, and Nick was my metal detector guy. He loved metal detecting. He would do it all day long and just dig up like everything he found. He was like addicted to it. So Nick found this pressure plate, and then that actually showed the infantry that you can find them and this equipment works. And then that day we found 5 other IEDs. And then after that, the infantry was on board, man. They loved the engineers metal detecting everywhere, you know. And we actually started training them to use it. And then by the time we left their unit, they had their own guys that were super efficient with it. And I don't think they got hit by any more IED. I don't think they had any more IED related casualties at deployment.
Yeah, that just sucks. It took people losing their lives for them to get the message across. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I mean, you can't look back and what if things like that.
Yeah, I know you can't. It's sad, but I hear that story, similar stories to this a lot, especially when dealing with combat engineers. It's like, it's hard for us to like tell them what we do. They actually have to like see it and trust us. You know what I mean? It's hard. At first they're like, oh, you guys can find bombs? Yeah, right. You know?
Yeah, so one of the things that I do in my real job I have is when I go and I mentor like when I go and talk to like brand new lieutenants, or I go and talk to like the ALC class, the staff sergeant or sergeant promotables, I always tell them, hey, you guys are the voice of the engineer, combat engineers, when you go and talk to these infantry and Cav Scout guys, because if you leave a bad impression on them to those PLs end up being company commanders. And when they're a company commander and they hear they got combat engineers on the ground, and they remember the time they had a shitty engineer platoon leader, or a shitty engineer squad leader, they're going to put those guys at the back of the formation. They're not going to use them. So I always make sure I try to impress upon them what impact they have for the future generations of combat engineers, and all engineers actually.
Yes, I agree 100%. And the good on the flip side of that thing too is once that PL like trusts you, they love engineers for the rest of their life, and they're gonna ask for you guys and request you guys on missions, because once they know what we're capable of, they love it. It's awesome. Like, yeah, if you're walking around Afghanistan and the biggest threat is IEDs, you want someone who can find the IEDs with you. It's just common sense,
Yeah, absolutely. And there's not enough EOD to go around to help people out, and that's why they utilize us so much, because yeah, I got it. When you come across some stuff, you're supposed to call EOD and wait for them to show up, but it could be a matter of hours, sometimes even a day before you get EOD support, and there you are, stop the mission, sitting on those potential IEDs, or put your combat engineer out there with a couple blocks of C4 and a metal detector and see what happens.
Yeah, when the other day that I just talked about, where we found the 5 IEDs and they actually started seeing what we were capable of, the same thing happened. I called up the talk to blow it in place, and they were like, no, EOD has to come in. So pretty much shut down the rest of the mission, and we sat there staring at these IEDs for like 6-7 hours before EOD could even get to us. So it was pretty cool, though. We got to shoot our first pod that day.
One of the things that, and this is getting really technical, one of the things that the other squads I had over there did to get around that EOD thing was they were legally and by regulation allowed to set off a quote-unquote exploratory charge. Now, that exploratory charge could have been 20 pounds of C4, but regardless, they were still setting off exploratory charges.
Yeah, they just didn't support us in blowing anything. That company commander didn't want us to blow anything up, only EOD. I mean, I did get to blow up a couple stuff. Like, we had AT4 misfire, so I got to blow that up in place. But other than that, they made us call EOD all the time.
Andrew, you got anything else about Clemons' interview?
Yeah, we got a little off track on this one, didn't we? No, that's about it. I think he did a great job. And oh yeah, actually I do. Dude, they left us. They left us, the sergeant major, just out there walking home by ourselves. It was 5 of us and their sergeant major, and they just left us. I had 2 rucksacks on, and we were carrying my Wobie full of gun parts and this equipment, and oh man, and they just left us, and we had to walk home by ourselves in the middle of the night. It was scary as hell.
Did the sergeant major go as soon as he got in the gate start ripping ass or not?
No, it didn't go like that. I'm sure he went into the talk and talked to the higher ups, but it was such a chaotic day, and there were so many mistakes made that I think it was just too much to handle it in one ass chewing session,
Yeah, I guess, but that would be a definite point I would like to hit upon if I was in charge of that, but I'm not. So with that being said, our next one coming up this Friday is Brian Shapiro. I'm very excited about that because we get to hear a different version of some of the stuff we've already gone over on previous seasons of this podcast. So this Friday is Brian Shapiro. Additionally, I'd like to remind everybody that we are currently looking for anyone who's in the emergency services, police, firefighter, paramedics, soldiers, anyone that's been through something. We're going to open up our next quote unquote season to being anybody that's in kind of the services for an interview. Is that about right, Andrew?
Yeah, and if you want to be on the podcast, please email me at survivingasacivilian.casting@gmail.com, and we'll get you on the show. Other than that, Scott, I'll talk to you next week.
Hey, thanks for your time, Andrew. It's always a pleasure.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Getting the message out about suicide prevention is a team effort. We need people to be brave enough to tell their stories. We need supporters to care enough to spread the word. If you have a story you want to share, please email us at survivingasacivilian.casting@gmail.com. And if you want to help share this project, like and subscribe to Surviving as a Civilian on Instagram and Facebook. The most important thing Andrew and I want to get across is that if you need help, get help. And if you can give help, please do it. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is at 1-800-273-8255. Until next time.